Hello everyone, my name's Rebecca and today I am here with the books I recommend you add to your bucket list. Now, I have a number of books here and I don't actually have all the ones I'm going to mention. I also have a couple more that are on my Kindle or are in my sister's room. So yeah, let's just get straight into it because who doesn't love book recommendations? The first book I'm going to recommend is The Curious Incident of the Dog in the Nighttime by Mark Haddon. So this story follows Christopher. He's 15 and he has Asperger's. Now, this follows Christopher as he finds he likes things being in a certain way, which is part of his Asperger's syndrome. He likes things being in a certain way, he has routines, and one day he finds the next door neighbour's dog lying dead on the lawn. And obviously that is not right. And it follows him as he investigates what actually happened to his neighbour's dog, and he tries to track down the killer and then write a murder mystery about it, because why not? So this book's really short and it follows Christopher's sort of journey through this book. I really enjoyed it because it's a very different perspective to read from if you've never read from it before. I read it at A level, which is the equivalent of like your finals before going to university and like before going to college in America, and it blew my mind. And this is actually my school's copy and I forgot to give them it back, but hey ho, means I can reread it, which I'm planning to do as well over the summer, and it's great. I highly recommend it. The next book for this list is a bit of a tearjerker, and that is The Boy in the Striped Pyjamas by John Boyne. Now, I read this when I was in year 9, so I was about 14 at the time when I read it, and I read it in my English class and I cried like a baby. And if you haven't seen the film, really go see it and then decide if you want to read the book, because you can't there is just no way to describe this book other than heartbreaking. It follows a 9-year-old called Bruno, and his dad is a German officer in World War II. Now his family get relocated from, I think it's Berlin. Is it Berlin? I think it's Berlin. I want to say Berlin. They get uprooted from Berlin to a concentration camp, and Bruno goes out exploring out the back of their house where his mother says he's not supposed to go. He climbs out through the window of their basement. He climbs through the window of the basement and goes exploring and comes across a wired fence. And at first he thinks it's a farm, and then later finds out it's a concentration camp, but doesn't actually realise it's a concentration camp because he doesn't actually realise what his dad does. Across this wire he sits and he talks to a little boy named Shmuel, and they strike up a wonderful little friendship. It's absolutely gorgeous, and because we have this knowledge of what is actually going on that Bruno's unaware of, it breaks your heart. And I would highly recommend it because it's the perspective of World War II from a child, and it shows the naivety and the innocence that children actually have about such major events, and it's so sad, but don't let that put you off. I would highly recommend it. Okay, so the third book I have to add to this books I'd recommend isn't actually with me, and that is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, and I would recommend the whole trilogy for it. My grandma actually got me this series because she used to buy me books for Christmas all the time, so she bought me this series and I read all 3 in one sitting, as in each book had its own sitting. I read it in and it was unbelievable. I was gripped. It was a page turner, and because it's part of such a massive franchise now, I think in order to understand the films properly you must read the book first, especially with the likes of this and The Hobbit. I haven't actually read The Hobbit. It's on my TBR shelf, which is like this corner here. I haven't actually read The Hobbit and I was lost in the film, so I can't imagine what it must be like for someone to watch all 3 Hunger Games and not have a clue what's actually going on and what the point is of the Hunger Games. Do you know what I mean? So I would highly recommend all 3 of those, and if you can get the UK editions, the original UK editions, that would be even better because their covers are so nice, like compared to everyone else's. They're really nice. They're really different. But yeah, I would highly recommend it, and I dare you to read it in one sitting basically. So the fourth book I have to recommend today is The Host by Stephanie Meyer. Now this follows Mel, and Mel is a, how do I describe it? So this follows Mel and Wanda. And Wanda is the alien and Mel is the host. Basically what happens is aliens, they're going to be called aliens because they're more like little wisps and souls, which is kind of cute, but they come down from, you know, their spaceship and they use human bodies as hosts. They kill humans and use them as their hosts for however many years that human decides to live for. Until like the host's body dies, and then they can either get a new body or they can remove to another planet. Now Wanda has her name Wanderer for the reason you'd imagine. She wanders from planet to planet. She doesn't settle down on any one planet, and she's asked to come and be a human, and use the human's body as a host. And she's a bit wary because she hears, you know, they can fight back, they have a conscience, but you know, the Seekers and the alien heads kind of go, you know, no, it's fine. Every host body is just that, it's just a host, there's no conscience, there's no sort of, you know, human still in there. But of course, knowing Wanda's luck, there is, and she is called Mel, and she has such a fiery attitude, and this book follows Mel's desire to find her boyfriend and brother, and Wanda's desire to overcome her fighting back conscience. It is a wonderful, wonderful book. I would highly, highly recommend it. It is a bit big, but I read it all in one sitting, so, you know, that's just me. I would highly, highly recommend that to be added to your list. It is YA, and the reason I am adding it to this list, people will be like, why are you adding the host? The host's so childish. Is because it teaches you that Stephanie Meyer doesn't just write about glittery vampires. And it's a really good book to introduce you into the world of YA and dystopian, and just, I definitely recommend it. Okay, so this next book is part of a series, obviously, because that tends to be a theme at the minute, and that is Harry Potter, and I am not holding up all 7 books because my arm will fall off. I have only picked up the Philosopher's Stone here, but I do include the whole series in this. This is one of those things that if you didn't read it as a child, read it as an adult. They actually had adult editions out when I was younger. I don't know if they're any different. I feel like I should read them to find out if they are any different, but I highly doubt it. For those of you who don't know, this follows Harry, and he's a wizard. And that's all I'm going to say, because you should know what it's about, really. Because if you don't know what it's about, have you been living under a rock recently? You know, for the past like 15-20 years. But anyway, I would highly, 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 highly recommend this series, because who wouldn't? Okay, so the next book I would recommend is Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre. Now, I'm not just picking this because it's set where I'm from. I'm picking this because I read this when I was about 16, and at the time I didn't really understand it, but I still flew through it. So I'm going to pick this up as a reread anyway, so that's going to go back on my next book bucket list video. But yeah, do I need to say more? Do I really need to say more? Yeah, Jane Eyre, everyone, Jane Eyre. And finally, the last book I am going to recommend to you today is The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This still has a sticker on it because I got this yesterday at a charity shop as part of a 3 books for a pound deal, or was it 4 for a pound? Basically, I got it on a deal at a bookshop, and it is like, I want to say it's like an ARC copy. I'm not sure if this is how you get ARC copies, but it's a World Book Night copy. And I wanted the physical copy for it, so I got it, basically, because I read it on ebook and I wanted the physical copy. Now, this book is narrated by Death. How great is that? I would highly recommend it just on that fact alone. Like, it's narrated by Death. Come on. Shall I read it back for you? Here is a small fact. You are going to die. This is set in Nazi Germany, and it follows Liesel, or Liesel, however you want to say her name. She's a 9-year-old and living with a foster family on Himmel Street because she has been uprooted through the war and evacuation. Her parents have been taken away to a concentration camp, but I can't remember if she realises that or not. And Liesel steals books. She is every booktuber's dream child. She steals books. Obviously, we'd prefer if children pay for their books, but you know, if the only way you can get books is to steal them, go for it. This is her story and the story of her street and just how they cope with the concentration camps. But of course it's narrated by Death, so naturally what's going to happen, there is going to be stuff about, you know, Death talks about how he claims some of his victims, and it's a beautiful book. I cried a lot again. Okay, so you've seen all the books on my on my recommendations for your book bucket lists. Now, would you recommend any for me? Because I do have a list of books that I am going to stick on my bucket list, but I can't decide if I should get to them sooner rather than later. And if I get to them sooner rather than later, I'm going to have to add more recent releases on it, like things like the Lunar Chronicles and things like that, because books to read before you die, I would imagine that kind of thing isn't completely essential. So if anybody has any tips or any recommendations for books for me, please let me know in the comments down below. Have you read any of those books, or would you like to add any of those books to your bucket lists? Let me know in the comments down below, and I shall hopefully see you all soon with another video. Bye!